My parents and brother refused to take my 15-year-old daughter to the ER after she broke her leg. "We don't have time," they told her. Then they made her walk for 3 hours. I didn't scream. Instead, I did something else. 4 days later, they were the ones yelling in panic. But what they didn't know was that I'd been recording every phone call, every excuse, every lie. And I had a secret weapon they never saw coming: my job. I'm a criminal investigator, and I just made them my case. It was a Tuesday that started like psychological warfare disguised as paperwork. I sat at my desk in the Criminal Investigation Unit, surrounded by case files that contained humanity's worst impulses documented in triplicate. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days building cases against people who hurt children, never imagining I'd soon be building one against my own family. My office smelled like burnt coffee and the kind of fluorescent light desperation that clings to government buildings. I was gnawing on a pen that had died 3 reports ago when my phone lit up with Sophie's face. My 15-year-old daughter, currently on spring break with my parents, my brother Mark, and her cousins, somewhere I couldn't reach by car, train, or reasonable adult behavior. I smiled instinctively. Probably another vacation update. Maybe a terrible tourist meal or some historical landmark that looked nothing like the brochure. The whole trip had been her idea, actually. She'd begged to join my parents, Mark, and her cousins on this out-of-state adventure. It lined up perfectly with spring break, and she was desperate for independence, for memories that didn't involve her helicopter mom hovering in the background. I couldn't go. Work obligations aside, I don't fly. Haven't in over 10 years. Not just preference. Full-blown, sweaty palms, heart racing, panic attack at the boarding gate phobia. Even the smell of jet fuel makes my throat close. So we drive, we take trains, we stay grounded. That's how I stay functional. But Sophie had looked at me with those eyes that were too wise for 15 and said, "Mom, I need to do this. I need to prove I can handle myself without you." And because I remembered what it felt like to be 15 and suffocating under parental protection, I said yes. So I answered, expecting sunshine and complaints about hotel breakfast. Instead, I got Sophie sitting rigid on a hotel bed, her usual brightness dimmed to something that made my investigative instincts prick up immediately. "Hey, Mom," she said, and her voice had that careful quality I recognized from witness interviews. Someone trying very hard not to say the wrong thing. "Can I tell you something but promise not to freak out?" Spoiler alert, I absolutely freaked out. Not externally. Years of interrogating criminals had taught me to keep my face neutral while my brain cataloged every micro-expression. But internally, full meltdown mode engaged. "What's going on?" I asked, already standing, already reaching for my jacket. She turned the camera and I saw her leg elevated on hotel pillows. Swollen, red, purple. The skin stretched taut along her ankle and shin like an overfilled balloon. This wasn't "twisted my ankle" swelling. This was "something is very, very wrong" swelling. "I think I broke it," she said, and the casual way she delivered potential medical trauma made my professional alarm bells start clanging. "What do you mean you think you broke it?" My voice stayed level, but I was already pulling up flight websites on my laptop. "I fell yesterday. At that old palace place. On the stairs. Yesterday." I glanced at my calendar. They'd been gone for 3 days. "Okay, so who's looked at it?" "What did the doctor say?" "No doctor. Grandma, Grandpa, and Uncle Mark all said it didn't look that bad at first. They figured it was just bruising. We kept touring." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "You kept touring? On a potentially broken leg?" "I walked for maybe 3 hours. They said I'd feel better once we finished the walking tour. They said I was probably just being dramatic." Dramatic. There it was. The word that had followed me through childhood like a scarlet letter. the word they'd now pinned on my daughter. "Where are they now?" I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Sophie hesitated. "Out. They said I could stay at the hotel and rest while they went to some winery." "You're alone? In another state? With what might be a broken leg?" She nodded, and something in her expression reminded me viscerally of myself at her age, trying so hard to be easy, to not be a burden, to not be the problem child who ruined everything. "Sophie, listen to me. Don't move. I'm coming to get you." "Mom, you don't have to. You'd have to fly." "I'm aware. But you haven't flown since—" "I know. I'm already checking flights." The silence stretched between us. Then quietly, "Okay." I hung up, opened my laptop properly, and booked the next available flight. 90 minutes. No time for fear, no time for logic, no time for the voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother telling me I was overreacting. Then I called my parents. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Voicemail. Called Mark. He answered cheerfully, background noise suggesting he was definitely at that winery. "Hey, Erica. How's the desk job treating you? You left Sophie alone in a hotel room with a broken leg." Pause. Then, "She said she was fine. She's always been a little sensitive. Sensitive. Another family favorite. Mark, she can't walk. It's probably just a sprain. The swelling didn't even start until last night. Look, we didn't make her walk. She's 15. She could have said something if it was really that bad." "She did say something. You told her she was being dramatic." "You're blowing this out of proportion." There's that phrase again. The family motto. I hung up without another word, grabbed my emergency bag, the one I kept packed for crime scenes, and headed for the door. My boss looked up as I burst into his office. "Family emergency," I announced. "I have to go." "What kind of emergency?" "The kind where I leave right now." He started to argue. I didn't wait to hear it. In the elevator, I booked a cab. In the cab, I texted Sophie, "I'm coming. Don't take anything for pain. Stay in bed. Document everything." That last part was pure investigator instinct. If this went where I thought it might go, we'd need evidence. I stared at Sophie's reply. A single heart emoji, the entire ride to the airport. And then I ran. Through check-in, through security, sweating and disoriented and fighting every instinct that told me to turn back. I hate flying. I really, really hate it. The last time I'd been on a plane, I was 25 and had a panic attack so severe they nearly diverted the flight. Mark had filmed it, later adding sound effects and playing it at family gatherings for laughs. Remember when Erica lost her mind at 30,000 feet? But I hated what they were doing to Sophie more than I hated the possibility of plummeting to Earth in a metal tube. So I boarded that plane, strapped myself in, and spent the next 2 hours gripping the armrests while mentally building a case file against my own family. The woman next to me slept through the entire flight while I sat there compiling evidence. Phone records. I could pull those. Medical documentation. We'd need that. Witness statements. Tourist areas have cameras. See, here's the thing about being a criminal investigator. You learn to think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. You learn to document everything. You learn that people lie, especially when their negligence hurts someone they're supposed to protect. And you learn that family can be the worst perpetrators of all, because they assume love creates immunity from consequences. I hadn't flown in over 10 years, not because I enjoyed limiting my world, but because the last time I'd shown vulnerability in front of my family, it became entertainment. Mark filming my panic attack. My mother's voice. "You really need to grow out of this drama." Mark is 3 years older than me and has never met a situation he couldn't bulldoze through with confidence and volume. He was the golden child, athletic, loud, the star of every family gathering. He had the kind of energy that filled rooms and never once questioned whether it should. I, meanwhile, was allergic to half the outdoors. Loud noises gave me headaches. Heights made me dizzy. My knees hurt after excessive walking. Once, I fainted during a family hike from heat exhaustion. My mom gave me half a bottle of water and told me to toughen up. Everything I experienced was labeled performance, attention-seeking, weakness. If I cried, it was manipulation. If I got scared, it was embarrassing. If I asked to sit something out, I was being selfish. They called me a drama queen before I hit double digits. Mark could sprain a finger and get carried home like a wounded soldier. The rules were different for him. Still are. I didn't talk much growing up. I learned patterns instead. I studied behaviors. I stopped reacting. And then I got out, went to law school, became a criminal investigator. People were surprised. Isn't that kind of intense for someone like you? Meaning, aren't you too delicate? Too emotional? Number? I'm not delicate. I just know what it feels like to be disbelieved. I built a career around evidence, around truth that doesn't require permission to exist. When Sophie was born, she was like me from day one, thoughtful, sensitive, observant, small and quiet with this little furrow in her brow, like she was trying to solve the world's problems through kindness. I swore I'd protect her. When my dad joked about Drama Queen 2.0, I shut it down. When Mark's daughter got praised for being feisty while Sophie got labeled too emotional, I said not on my watch. But kids notice silences more than noise. They feel what isn't said. Sophie had internalized the family dynamic despite my protection, which is why she'd asked to go on this trip. To prove she could handle herself. To show she wasn't the fragile one they all thought she was. By the time I reached the hotel, I'd forgotten how to breathe normally. Sophie opened the door herself, pale, still in pajamas, leaning against the doorframe for support. "You actually came?" she said softly. That shattered me. Not "thank you" or "help me" or even "finally." Just surprise, like she hadn't believed I really would come. I gently hugged her. "Of course I came. You're the only reason on this planet I'd get on a plane." Then I added, "Please don't ever make me do it again." She laughed, and that sound was worth every moment of terror at 35,000 feet. Getting her shoes on took 15 minutes. Half of that was negotiating whether she needed both. She didn't. One foot had swallowed a baseball. "So how did it happen exactly?" I asked while tying her laces. I expected teenage embarrassment about clumsiness. Instead, she went quiet. "It wasn't really a fall," she said finally. "Ben pushed me, as a joke." I looked up slowly. "He pushed you?" "He didn't mean to hurt me. I was taking a picture and he shoved me like he always does, but I missed a step. And then I was on the ground." My investigative training kicked in. "They saw it happen? All of them?" She nodded. "Grandma said I was being dramatic. Uncle Mark told me to stop crying because I was scaring the tourists. Grandpa asked if I'd twisted it before the trip and just not told you. And you didn't tell me that on the call because I thought it would go away, and because I didn't want to make it a big thing. I didn't want to get Ben in trouble." I stood up. "Sophie, when someone pushes you downstairs and your leg swells like this, you don't protect them. Not even if they're family. Especially not if they're family." At the hospital, they took us back quickly, possibly because I mentioned the words potential child neglect when describing the delay in treatment. The nurse asked routine questions: pain level, symptoms, allergies. Then, "How did this happen?" Sophie glanced at me, straightened her shoulders, and said clearly, "My cousin pushed me as a joke. I fell down some stairs." She said it like a fact. No drama, no embellishment, just truth. The nurse's pen moved faster across the page. X-ray results. Tibial fracture. Non-displaced, but definitely broken. She's lucky it didn't shift, the doctor said. If she'd walked much more on this. He didn't finish the sentence. I finished it silently with a catalog of complications that could have resulted from untreated fractures. After the doctor left, I turned to Sophie. Tell me everything, full timeline. She talked. After the fall, she'd begged to go to the hospital. They said there was no time. It was a walking tour day. Tickets were non-refundable. She could ice it at the hotel that evening. They made her walk for 3 hours on that leg. The next morning, when she asked again, they told her if she was really in pain, she could rest at the hotel. But they had a winery tour booked and someone needed to watch the younger kids. Then they left her. All of them. Did they say anything else? I asked. They told me I was acting like you used to. Like a drama queen. Afraid of everything. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just neglect. This was history repeating, and they were trying to erase her voice the way they'd tried to erase mine. Except this time, I wasn't letting them. I stepped into the hallway and called my parents. My dad answered immediately. Is she okay? Not because he cared, but because he knew I'd discovered everything. She has a fracture. Doctor confirmed. Pause. Well, it didn't look that bad at the time. Ben pushed her. Another pause. That's not really fair. He was just playing around. You all saw it happen. She fell downstairs. You walked away. Silence. I'm pressing charges, I said. That got a reaction. Erica, come on. You're going to drag the whole family into court over this? Yes. For a little accident? You're being irrational. No, I said. I'm being a mother. I hung up, went back to Sophie's room, and pulled out my phone. I opened my notes app and typed, request legal consultation. Medical neglect. Possible child endangerment. But here's what I didn't tell my father on that call. I'd been recording. Every conversation since Sophie first called me. My phone automatically backs up to cloud storage. I had documentation of every excuse, every minimization, every lie, because I'm a criminal investigator. And I never go into a situation without evidence. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hotel room with my laptop, building a case the way I'd built hundreds of others. Timeline construction, evidence gathering, witness identification. Tourist attractions have security cameras. I knew this. I made phone calls. Professional courtesy goes a long way when you're law enforcement asking another jurisdiction for cooperation in a child endangerment case. The footage came through 3 days later after we'd flown home and Sophie was in a cast, attending physical therapy sessions I was paying for alone. The video was clear. Midday sunlight, stone steps, my daughter standing with her camera, smiling. Ben, 12 years old, charges up behind her and shoves her elbow hard enough to send her flailing. She slips, crashes forward, disappears from frame. But the part that made my stomach turn wasn't the fall. It was the cluster of adults in the background. Mark, Mom, Dad, all watching it happen. No one runs. No one drops their bag. They stand there like she wasn't real. I forwarded the video to my lawyer with a single message. How quickly can we file? The case meant multiple court appearances, paperwork, interviews. It meant flying several more times. Turns out, once you do the thing you swore you couldn't do and survive, it rewires something fundamental. Sophie looked at me across the kitchen one morning and said, "You're flying again." I nodded. Apparently, maternal rage is stronger than fear of crashing. When we got home from that first trip, the screaming started. Mark showed up first, barging onto my porch with that old smugness. "You're really doing this?" "Yes." "You're going to destroy the family. You know that, right?" "Should have thought about that before you left a child with a broken leg in a hotel room." Next came my parents. Together, always a sign they were coordinating their strategy. Mom tried guilt. "We're your parents, Erica. You can't take us to court. What will people say?" Dad tried intimidation. "Drop this now, and we can all move on." I looked them both in the eye. "You made her walk for 3 hours on a broken leg. You saw her fall and laughed at her pain. I'm not letting this go." They stormed out, but they weren't finished. Phone calls came next. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all with the same message. "Your mom's a mess. Mark could lose his job. Can't you just move on? Don't tear the family apart." So I told them the truth. All of them. I shared the footage, the x-rays, the documented timeline of neglect. By the fourth call, the tone had shifted. "I had no idea she was actually hurt. They left her alone? Why didn't they call you immediately?" Eventually, the calls stopped. Court wasn't dramatic. No gavel banging, no courtroom gasps. Just a weary judge, attorneys trading documents, and a very clear verdict. Child endangerment, medical neglect, failure to report injury. All three, my parents and Mark, got charges on their permanent records. No jail time, but the fines were brutal, the kind that make your throat tight when you see the number. Then came the part Mark never saw coming. He lost his job. Apparently, schools aren't eager to employ PE teachers with child endangerment charges. 6 weeks later, they moved to a smaller house in a worse neighborhood. Mom called it temporary, but extended family gossip suggested they were begging for rent money within a month. They never asked me for help. They didn't need to. They already knew the answer. I'd shut off all financial support. No more emergency loans. No more, "Can you help with groceries this month?" They were on their own. Sophie got quieter after everything was over. Not withdrawn. More sure of herself. Like she no longer needed to defend how she felt or apologize for taking up space. One night, folding laundry, she said, "I think I would have just let it go." She paused. "But I'm glad you didn't." "You should never have to scream just to be believed," I told her. Later that night, she showed me a message from Ben. "Hey, I know this is late, but I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you, even as a joke. I was trying to be funny, but it was stupid. I feel terrible. I hope your leg's healing okay." She didn't reply immediately, just stared at the screen. "You believe him?" I asked. She shrugged. "Yeah, I think so. I don't think anyone told him to send that." And I believed her judgment. Sophie had learned to trust her instincts in ways I was still learning. 4130 to 4430. The aftermath. I don't speak to my family anymore. I didn't block them, didn't post dramatic social media announcements. I just stopped responding. Stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Stopped hoping they'd change. No drama. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence felt like peace. I still hate flying, but I've done it multiple times now. For the case, for work, for a weekend getaway with Sophie to celebrate her cast coming off. Every time my palms get sweaty, my stomach flips. But I still go. And every time I land, I think about what Sophie said when I showed up at that hotel. "You actually came." I always will. 6 months later, Mark reached out through a mutual relative. He wanted to reconcile. According to the message, he'd been in therapy, realized he'd made mistakes, wanted to make amends. I didn't respond. Not because I'm unforgiving, but because reconciliation requires acknowledgement of harm, and his message focused on his therapy, his growth, his desire to feel better about himself. Nothing about Sophie. Nothing about the 3 hours she walked on a broken leg because he couldn't be inconvenienced. Nothing about the hotel room where she spent the night alone, wondering if anyone would believe her pain. Some bridges deserve to stay burned. Sophie's leg healed completely. No permanent damage, no lingering pain. Just a memory and a quiet confidence that her voice matters, her pain is valid, and she doesn't have to minimize herself to make other people comfortable. That's worth every uncomfortable flight, every legal fee, every family relationship that didn't survive the truth. I learned something too. The people who call you dramatic for having needs are usually the ones who expect you to absorb their drama without complaint. So, what do you think? Did I go too far, or just far enough? And more importantly, when someone shows you who they are, especially family, do you believe them? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you love, I see you. Sometimes love looks like flying when you're terrified. Sometimes it looks like building a case against people you used to trust. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone's pain go unwitnessed. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when the world tries to silence it.